In recognition of your unwavering lifetime commitment for protection of animals and your relentless dedication to addressing this moral urgency with the highest level of seriousness and hard work, while many of the lives you have saved will never learn about you or have the opportunity to thank you, we thank you on behalf of all the human and non-human animals you have sheltered under your wings. No evil lasts forever, but the impact of your work, your kindness, and your dedication to the cause of animal protection will be eternal and immortal, leaving a lasting imprint for generations to come. And we vow to carry your mission forward, ensuring that your legacy lives on, until every cage is empty and every animal is liberated. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. It's so nice to be in a room full of vegans. I don't have to watch my P's and my Q's. First of all, I'd like to thank Sheena, Lefke, Peter, and John, and many others for doing such a wonderful job in making Faraz's visit so memorable so far. I'm very grateful for everything you've done. 10 years ago, I received a rather strange phone call from a headmaster in a school in India. Now, I'd never heard of this school before, and they asked if they could name a house after me. Now, a house is not a building in this circumstance. It's a system of dividing groups of students into large numbers so they can compete with each other in sport and in academia. That's a house. And it's modeled on the Old English system of Eton and Harrow. And they wanted to name this house after me, and I'd never met these guys before. Of course, I was honored, and of course, I agreed. And anyway, 2 years later, the headmaster called again. And this time, and I still hadn't met him, he wanted to inaugurate an annual award and a lucrative cash prize for leadership in animal protection. And he wanted to know if he could name the award after me. Of course, I was honored again, and I agreed. Bear in mind, I'd never heard of these guys or met them before. And I had no say whatsoever in nominating or selecting the winner. So, of course, I was nervous that one day they would give the award to somebody I detested, and it would have my name on it. But I needn't have worried. On one occasion, they gave the award to Rampi Madan, a wonderful woman and activist who I happened to know and had funded. So far, I've invested many tens of millions of dollars in this project, so I know a lot of people in various places. And a year later, they gave it to Ravi Dubey, another activist that I'd been funding since 2006. And last year, they gave it to Sandra Kyle from New Zealand. And I knew her too because I was on her radio program 20 years ago. But last year, I discovered they'd given the award to someone I'd never heard of before. And I had to Google him. And his name was Faraz Harsini. Had no idea who he was. Now, this young man has a very impressive academic background. His bachelor's degree was in chemical engineering, real underachiever intellectually, I got to tell you. Bachelor's degree in chemical engineering. His master's was in biotech, and his doctorate was in biomedical science, a real underachiever. And his vegan activism, I don't have to tell you, on campus is beyond inspiring. Now, the most beautiful word ever written in any language, at any time, in any country in human history, came from India, from the Upanishads, 3,000 years ago. Ahimsa, non-violence to any living being. So to be truly ethical, by definition, one must be vegan. Not because veganism describes our nationality, our politics, our religion, our diet, or our lifestyle, but because it defines our character. It tells us that we reject violence wherever and whenever it occurs. Now, the Voyager spacecraft took a picture of planet Earth, a tiny dot in space, lost in a cloud of galaxies. And Carl Sagan described our beautiful home as our pale blue dot suspended on a sunbeam. What a captivating, arresting, enchanting thought. Suspended on a sunbeam. Well, today on our pale blue planet Earth, our pale blue dot, our beautiful home, human beings comprise 30% of the biomass of all land animals. Animals in slaughterhouses, on the other hand, account for 66% of the biomass. And wild animals have been exterminated down to a miserly 4%. 70% of all birds, descendants from the dinosaurs, are imprisoned in cages awaiting slaughter. We have turned Carl Sagan's beautiful pale blue planet Earth into blood-stained planet slaughterhouse, a pox on our house. Now, in human history, only 100 billion people have ever lived. 8 billion people are alive today. And we humans torture and kill 2 billion sentient, living, loving animals every week. 2 billion. We stab and suffocate 1 billion ocean animals every 8 hours. If humans were killed at the same rate, we'd be wiped out in one weekend. Trillions of fish are ground up into pellets to feed the livestock. Vegetarian cows are now the world's largest ocean predators. The oceans today are dying in our time. Within this generation, all our fisheries will be dead, the lungs and the arteries of the earth. And oceans sequester more CO2 than all the forests of the world put together. Many of you would know my involvement with Sea Shepherd and the campaigns we run around the world. 10,000 entire species are wiped out every year because of the actions of one species. And we now face the 6th mass extinction in cosmological history. If any other organism did this, a biologist would call it a virus. It is a crime of unimaginable proportions. But we should not be disheartened. The anthropologist Margaret Mead said, "Never doubt that a few committed people can change the world. Indeed, that is the only thing that ever has." Trix and I sat in the stadium at the Olympics full of pride as Australia, with a population less than Florida, won more medals than every country in the world except for the United States, Russia, and China. Tibet's population is only 3 million. Ukraine is 40 million. There are 12 million Uyghurs, 6 million Syrian refugees, and 1 million Rohingyas. Is there anyone in this room who hasn't heard of the plight of the Ukrainians, the Tibetans, the Uyghurs, the Syrians, or the Rohingya? But there are over 600 million vegans and vegetarians in the world. 600 million vegans and vegetarians. And that is bigger than the United States, England, France, Germany, Spain, Italy, Canada, Australia, all put together. If we were one nation, we would be bigger than the 27 nations of the European Union. We are bigger than NATO. We are bigger than OPEC. We are bigger than the 11 nations of ASEAN. We're bigger than the 29 nations of Latin America and the Caribbean. We are bigger than the entire populations of 22 Arab countries combined. And we are bigger than all the Warsaw Pact countries, including the old Soviet Union. If we were a religion, we would be bigger than every religion in the world except for 3 combined. You can put all the other religions together and we'd have more. And despite this massive demographic footprint, we are still drowned out by the raucous hunt and shoot and kill and cretins who believe that violence is the answer when it should not even be a question. So today I support some 500 projects in 54 countries. And as a consequence, I speak in various parliaments, congresses, and boardrooms in many countries. Well, 20 years ago, in a crowded boardroom of a major bank, I asked the chairman, in front of all these young high achievers, how many of you people in this room were magna cum laude at your university, or won the university medal, or topped your year in any subject, in engineering, economics, law, or science? Many hands went up. They were the smartest guys in the room. And I asked, how many of you considered ever going into non-corporate activities in your careers, like human rights, animal rights, the environment, or the peace movement? No hands went up. Well, this saddened me deeply. The best and the brightest were attracted to companies, not to causes. And then the chairman asked me, Phil, are there any people in your network you think are qualified and are capable to, say, run a big international bank or a major law firm or an airline? I was embarrassed to admit I knew of no one. So 20 years ago, I started working very closely with some young, brilliant young people, encouraging them, supporting them in every way I could to be as successful as those young people in that big boardroom. And today I can say I have some good news. The world is changing. Many years ago, a young man came to one of my speeches. He was big, strong, muscular, full of tattoos. And he was an ex-Australian Army soldier, a sniper and a mercenary in Iraq. His life was revolving around hunting and killing animals and people. But his life had changed. His new passion was protecting rhinos and elephants in Africa. Well, I got involved and supported him in many ways, intellectually and financially, and then I went on his board. Well, today, his organization employs a powerful force of 900 trained, heavily armed, anti-poaching rangers, all of whom are women. They control 13 million acres of wild forest and coastline across Africa. And they've reduced poaching by 90% and rebuilt entire economies. This young man could run the Commonwealth Bank if he chose to do so. And 20 years ago, a young Swedish teenage boy, active in the marine environmental space, came to stay with us. I treat him like my adopted son. And I funded his organization to the tune of some millions of dollars and worked very closely with him and mentored him. Well, today his fleet of ships have arrested 99 ships from China and the European Union. Those countries have bankrupted many impoverished artisanal fishing communities and nations in Africa, particularly the West African Atlantic. And this young man, through his work, has rebuilt the economies of 7 countries on this continent. As a humorous side note, I wrote a reference nominating him to receive a very important environmental award, which he in fact did win. And this is what I wrote. He has the mind of a scholar, the courage of a first responder, the compassion of a carer, the investigative skills of a detective, the memory of a Mensa elephant, the observant powers of a spy, and the multitasking skills of a blindfolded juggler riding a unicycle whilst playing the trombone. Small wonder he won the award. This young man could run Qantas if he wanted to. So today I have high hopes that Faraz will be as successful in his career as the 2 young men I described. And I have all good thoughts and wishes for your future, Faraz. Judge White's closing words in The Bonfire of the Vanity were these: "The law is humanity's first attempt at decency." So I ask you to join the battle in a war that decency cannot afford to lose. Because in the end, only 3 things matter: how deeply you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things that were not meant for you. Meat was not meant for you. And when I was a young man, ambitious as you could imagine, I read a book by a man named Robert Burford. And he said, in the first half of your life, you're entitled to try to be successful. But in the second half of your life, you're obligated to try to be significant. So I followed his words. In the first half of my life, I worked very hard to be successful. And in the second half of my life, I tried to be significant. But now that I'm older and wiser, I think that Burford was wrong. I now say you don't have to wait for the second half of your life to be successful or significant. You can do something significant starting right now. And that is exactly what Faraz is doing. He is doing something significant. And that is important. And that is why he is here. So it gives me great pleasure to ask you to welcome Dr. Faraz Harsini.
Thank you. I don't even know how to follow that. I think you said everything, so we can maybe go home now. I've been admiring Philip for a long time, so that's my primary reason to fly from the US to come here to meet him. And it's not just about veganism, it's about the wisdom that I rarely see and I just wanted to capture. And I also think that I learned that veganism is a moral urgency pretty late in my life, and I don't think that we can afford that. I just want to bring that to colleges and universities for reasons I will mention. But yeah, I was supposed to be here on Sunday, but my flight got canceled because 4 out of 6 toilets were clogged after 2 hours of taxiing. So my working hypothesis is lack of fiber in non-vegan diet. So led to big poops. Yeah, so I'm Faraz. I have 2 lives. One of them is at Allied Scholars for Animal Protection, or ASAP, and the other one is at Good Food Institute. It's an international nonprofit that works on alternative proteins. I want to tell you about why I think that veganism is a moral urgency, and we have these signs that we're putting up all over university campuses and making it impossible to not be seen. I've been questioning in my life, like, what is the best thing I can do with my limited time on this planet? And I think that veganism is something that addresses one of the largest sources of pain and suffering in the world. When you think about what you do with your life, it's not just the problem being very large, it's also how neglected it is. Cancer is a big problem, but it's not neglected. There's like a lot of money and a lot of researchers working on it. But something that is extremely neglected is veganism and promoting plant-based diet. You have environmental scientists, they don't want to talk about food. You have infectious diseases scientists who work on pandemics, they don't want to talk about food. You have all these people who say they are kind and compassionate and decent and animal lovers. Ironically, they go to Chick-fil-A and restaurants and McDonald's and shove body parts of animals in their faces without ever thinking about the sentient beings behind the scenes. So it's extremely neglected, and the good thing is it's actually solvable. And we don't need the entire world to do the right thing. We need a small group of dedicated and thoughtful people just like yourself to speak up. I want to tell you a little about my background. So this is me day one, look like a potato. And this is the last picture that I have with my mom. This is in Iran, in Tehran International Airport. And there are a few things about this picture that sort of bother me. One is the sausage in the background. The last picture I have with my mom has dead animals in it. The other thing is my mom is actually not religious, but women are forced to wear hijab in Iran. So that tells you about the state of human rights. The other thing that is annoying is that this could be the last picture I have with my mom because for reasons you will learn, I can't go back to Iran and my mom can't leave. And I know she's not doing well. And this very well could have been the last time that I actually saw her. And I'm also the only child. Just a few weeks ago, Iran shot some rockets to Israel, and Israel retaliated. And my mom was like, yeah, I had to, I heard explosions, I had to run out. And here I am listening to these stories, but there's nothing I can do. But the reason I dedicate my life, this is not a political message, it's just there are other things that I care about in my life, but still the biggest and most neglected problem in the world is animal oppression. I've gone through, a fair share of stuff in my life, but I don't think anything that I've ever experienced comes close to something that animals have to tolerate in one day. And that's one reason I focus on veganism. But yeah, my bachelor was chemical engineering, but during my bachelor, I saw there was a big oil spill, and I was like, I don't want to work on petroleum, so I switched to environmental stuff. But when I was in college, I was still asking myself, like, what is the most impactful thing I can do? And working on petroleum didn't feel like the most impactful thing, so naturally I became a clinic clown. So I'm a musician, so I had a couple of friends who said, hey, you should come and join our group. We went to hospitals in the cancer center. We played music for children. And it was a really tough time in my life because I'm both introvert and shy. So like every time I do public speaking, part of me dies. And then I had to put myself out there and go to this environment. There's like this big room with mothers and their children around, and there's a sorrow dominating that environment, and then you have to like suck that sorrow and try to like be silly and make the children laugh. And it felt like sometimes on my way home I would just cry because we told ourselves that we shouldn't like connect with these children, but we are human, right? And I had my favorites, and then when you go back and you don't see them, you're like, you want to ask like what happened, but you sort of know the answer. But this sort of changed my life. After doing this, I asked myself, is this the best thing I can do for cancer patients? And is clowning the way to go? Surprisingly, the answer was no. So I started doing cancer research for my graduate studies. And then after my doctorate, I worked on infectious diseases, COVID, influenza, and a bunch of other things. But at that point, I thought that this was enough. Pretty much every disease I ever worked on came down to what we do to animals. It had something to do with the food that we are eating. All the infectious diseases I was trying to work on would not have become an issue if we were not eating animals to begin with. So basically, I tell people that even if you hate animals, you should still be plant-based for all these other reasons that I have here: world hunger, sustainability, and everything. But of course, when you add animal suffering, there is nothing to that scale. I did my bachelor in University of Tehran before moving to the US. And this is like a stock picture of University of Tehran, which is like the oldest and best university in my home country. And it shows a bunch of happy students. But I had a different experience. My experience was more like this. This exact day, we were protesting for basic human rights. It was a very peaceful protest. It was, for the most part, completely silent. We weren't even chanting. And there's this gate. Students were here, and the police and paramilitary forces were sort of closed the street this side. And as you can see, like there were like tear gas. They were, shooting tear gas and everything. But I want to tell you about what happened here. So as we were peacefully protesting, this guy comes, and all he does is that he shows us a peace sign. That's all he did. And the next thing we know, paramilitary forces attacked him and started beating him in the head with batons. And I think this was probably one of the most significant peaks in my life when I actually saw such a violence towards a human being, and I couldn't do anything because we were behind the gate and it was locked. As this guy was like screaming, the sound of sirens and the smell of tear gas and the smell of iron from my hand, I still remember it when we were trying to break this gate, but we couldn't. So people were just like, throwing like bags and shoes or whatever to save this life. And that day, as I thought that this can't get any worse, sorry for the pixelated picture, but this is the best I could find. Paramilitary forces actually broke inside the university. So that's the green gate, and they actually broke in and they had the flag. And at this point, I was trying to go and take cover somewhere, but I was tear gassed, so I couldn't really see clearly. All I remember is that suddenly there was like a group of people who appeared in front of me. And I didn't know what was happening until one of them, I was trying to figure out if they were like paramilitary forces or students running away, until one of them who raised his hand and said, "Motherfucker, wait." And that's probably the best motherfucker I've ever heard in my life. That was my cue that this is not students and I better run. And I ran as fast as I could. Now, my parents were revolutionary back in their time. And my mom always told me, don't go to this protest, it's not worth your life. And I remember I told my mom, I either go and lie about it or go and would tell you. And she said, well, at least tell me. And as I was running for my life, as this guy was running after me with a machete, I was like, if this guy hits me with my guts open in hospital, my mom is just gonna come and say, I told you so. And that was my extra motivation to run fast. But to make matters worse, I'm also gay, and if you know anything about Iran, homosexuality is also punishable by death, and they have acted upon that before. And I think this was also a significant moment in my life, because I really wish that I accepted myself, I just didn't talk about it, but it wasn't that. So imagine you're born in this environment, you cannot talk to anyone about it. The internet is filtered, so you can't look it up. You just notice that you're different from everyone else. And of course there are other gay people, but because nobody talks about it, you literally think you're the only, there is something terribly wrong with you. So I questioned, what's wrong with me? Am I sick? Maybe it's a phase. And went to a psychiatrist, and he was like, yeah, it's a phase, it'll go away. Forced myself to have a girlfriend. Spoiler alert, that didn't work. And that's why when I finally came to the US, I think it was, when I finally came out, it was one of the most liberating experiences of my life. It felt like I was always swimming with bags of stone attached to my arms and legs that suddenly I let go of. Have you guys seen this? This might be the best video on the internet.
Gay rights activist, Mr. Should I call him Mr? Pepe Julian Onzima. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for
Good morning. When are you gay?
This is so great. This is the state of LGBT rights in Iran, probably a little worse. But when I finally came out, I was in this cancer center, and I went to my colleague, his name is Ash, and I said, hey Ash, yeah, I'm gay. And he said, well, duh. I was like, God damn it. How could you tell? He said, just look at what you're wearing. I bet you can find a parrot that matches your style every single day. And we are scientists, so we had to test the hypothesis, and he was right. But I'll let you know why I mentioned this. I think all these forms of oppression and all these experiences eventually was something that veganism, for me, brought them together. You see all these papers, for instance, they say veganism could save the world. And I fully agree with that. I don't want to get into environmental stuff and public health that much, but I still want to mention a few things, because I think sustainability is one thing that we throw around without ever thinking about what it means. For something to be sustainable, it has to meet 3 criteria. It has to be environmentally friendly, it has to be economical, and it has to be liked by people. There is no way to eat animals and meet all 3 criteria. If you try to make it quote unquote humane and give these cows more space, then it's actually worse for the environment and it's more expensive. So that makes it by nature not sustainable. If you want to make it better for the environment, you actually have to use factory farm, which means that people won't like it. So there is no way to feed the world in a sustainable way with animals. It's funny because when I do activism on campuses, a lot of students tell me, well, you can't tell someone in a poor country to to be vegan, this is like privilege, which is so ironic because I think that us eating animals in the Western world is actually a leading cause of global malnutrition. It's in fact privilege to eat animals, if you call it privilege. And when you go to a lot of third world countries and poorer countries, people are not eating animal products that much. But what I'm showing you is that we need to feed 10 billion people by 2050. We already don't produce enough food, and that's because most of the energy is already wasted. As you can see, 80% of agricultural land, I'm not going to throw a lot of statistics at you, but you've probably seen this. 80% of agricultural land is dedicated to raising animals and animal agriculture, but that produces only 20% of global calories. So most of the energy and resources are wasted. And why is that? Is because when you feed animals, plants, lots of that energy is already wasted. So it's not sustainable. You've probably seen the environmental impact of different types of milks, right? You have emissions, land use, and water use. Which one is the worst one? Number one? Yeah. I call it the cow titty juice. I love to go to Starbucks and ask for alternatives to breast milk. And I love to watch them be so confused. They just think I'm a foreigner, so I don't know the right terminology. But it just shows you how brainwashed we've become, that we don't even think of, we feel so entitled to cow's milk that we don't even think of it as breast milk of another species. When I was working on cancer, again, I had this dilemma. I was asking myself, well, if I'm working on one disease, what should that one disease be? And wouldn't it make sense to pick the number one cause of death? And then you realize the number one cause of death is heart disease. I don't understand why heart disease is a thing. In 2024, number one cause of death in our species is something that is almost entirely preventable. Make it make sense to me. It doesn't make sense. And then you have cancer and diabetes and so many other lifestyle diseases significantly correlated with eating more animal products. I was doing cancer research and no one ever told me that, hey, there is a correlation between eating processed meat and red meat with cancer. And just to give you some reassurance, this is Harvard School of Public Health. It says half of your plate should be fruits and vegetables and the other half whole grains and legumes and nuts and seeds. Another thing that I'm very passionate about to talk about is all the humane washing and greenwashing and grass-fed and organic and all that. I always say that cage-free doesn't mean cruelty-free. And this is what cage-free looks like. It just means that you remove the cages. It doesn't really mean much for the animals. And it saddens me that a lot of efforts in our movement goes towards removing cages instead of questioning, should be looking at animals as commodities and slaves. This is an article that actually shows that grass-fed beef actually has higher environmental impact than normal beef. So these are not solutions. And no matter, my problem is not the size of animal agriculture. I actually try not to say animal agriculture because that paints animal agriculture as a problem instead of should we be eating animals. We have more underlying question. These are all the pandemics that killed millions of people, from flu to SARS and HIV and MERS and swine flu. None of this would have happened if we didn't eat animals. I don't say that in a vegan world, zoonotic diseases don't happen. They would, but not at the rate that it's happening right now. And remember that humans are not the only victims. Every time that this happens, they have to mass murder all these animals. I've seen this video. This is in China. They're basically burning these pigs in a hole alive. That's from a video, and I watched it. I don't know what to say. Or burying them alive, or here, burying ducks alive. And in the US right now, the way they do that is ventilation shutdown. If you haven't heard this, it's like basically turning off the ventilation for chicken barns and just letting the temperature rise until chickens die of painful death. But think about the irony of this. We are a nation where we see a dog in a car during summer, we break into the car to save a puppy. But we never make a connection that when we have meat, egg, dairy, and stuff like that, this is really what we are paying for. There is the antibiotic resistance. Again, it's one of the top threats to human life. And the root cause of it is 80% of antibiotics that we are spending in animal ag. I took this screenshot. Honestly, when I started doing this lecture, probably if that time we stopped eating animal products, we would not have bird flu right now going around. This is from Centers for Disease Control. In 2023, January, about 60 million birds were infected. But I showed this to students because I want to make a case that problem is not just commercial chickens, it's also backyard. So all those people who say, okay, fine, factory farms are bad, but what about backyard chicken? Have you heard that? People just say, right. That does not solve pandemic's problem. And this is from just 2 weeks ago. We went from 60 million to over 100 million. And now it's spread from chickens to dairy cows. So one of my only hobbies is flying, so I try to combine that with my other hobby, which is veganism. So now I fly over farms to investigate them. I live in Texas, so if you couldn't tell with my Texan accent. So this is one of the farms I flew over, the one that I was just showing you. But I'm going to show you a few things, but something to think about. These are lagoons. These are piles of waste. There is a river here. There are lakes and agricultural land. That's a river. Look at this. You know how this is. So it turns out that the dark circles that I showed you, I said, look at this. Those are actually birds. Those are migratory birds that come from Canada, but on their way to South America. Texas is where they land for resting and getting some water. And in Texas, there are not a lot of bodies of water, so they actually sometimes drink from these lagoons, which are full of hormones and antibiotics. One of the hormones is estrogen-like hormone, and it messes up their hormones. And the crazy thing is now they fly back to Canada, and it changes. So what we do in Texas changes bird population in Canada. And also, there is the antibiotic resistance. The same farm I'm showing you here, scientists showed that this is the direction of wind that blows over this farm. They took samples upwind and downwind, and what they found is in dust, upwind, they had antibiotic-resistant species that they couldn't find downwind. Meaning that when we talk about antibiotic resistance, it's not this like global issue. It's like literally every farm contributes to these problems. So that's the city, by the way. It's called Lubbock, Texas. The city has 200,000 people in it. This one farm alone that I just showed you has 50,000, just so you have an idea. And by the way, this whole town, I lived there. That's why I know so much about it. The whole town smells like cow shit. I'm not joking, because the wind blows this direction, so it directly blows all this stuff, especially like you have poorer people who live in this neighborhood. But I always ask myself, imagine if vegans caused an entire city to smell like shit. And like vegans are the annoying ones who are always like, tell you what to do. But imagine if we caused that much trouble. The scientists, I interviewed those scientists who actually did the antibiotic resistant test. I said, what made you interested in this study? To study this amongst everything. They said, we noticed that bee population was going down. I was like, how so? The hormones, they found hormones in the air. So the hormones that they use for these farms, it gets aerosolized in the air. So everyone in the city is inhaling antibiotic resistant stuff and hormones and pesticides, which led the bee population to go down, because those lagoons, they attract a lot of pests. So in order to prevent that, they spray the entire area with like pesticides. So we all have to inhale that because some people don't want to change. I also do investigations myself. It's not as cool as what Chris Delforce does, but I still don't want to be a scientist who works behind the computer, and I just wanted to see for myself. So I generally put my phone right here, and I go and I say, I'm a teacher, I want to learn more. And here I just said, after talking to the guy, I said, hey, can I see your calves, you know? But this is what I wanted to show you. I always wanted to pet like one of these calves. Could you show me one of these calves? Oh, horrible. Okay, thanks so much. But yeah, I hope it's not a bother. No, no, thank you. Thank you.
They're from today.
They're from today? Yes. Like they were born today?
Yes, they're born today.
So they separate them from
The mom.
day one?
There you go.
So these are all female, right?
Yeah, all female.
What happens to the male ones? I'm talking about men, bulls.
No, the whole.
Yeah, what happens
That's
to
the
them?
whole right away.
To the slaughterhouse?
Yeah, no, their company they come in and take it.
Okay. Do they raise them for meat or just kill meat? Meat.
Okay, đó là con sẽ mình được. $800.
That guy?
Ooh,
Bulls?
what?
$800.
Yes. Yeah, there's a company come every. They come Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 days in the week.
3 days.
Pick it up.
So we all hear how horrible dairy is, right? But I just wanted to, maybe it's a propaganda by vegans, who knows? So that's why, so what I wanted to show you is like day one, these babies are separated. It's a dairy farm. And if they're male, they're sold to slaughter, and $800. From the second they're born, they're looked upon as commodities and they have a price tag. And this is another farm. Just the reason I'm showing you is just I want you to think about the scale of this and tell me if there is anything as bad as this. How many individuals are we exploiting behind the doors? And we think that this is okay. Hey guys, I'm somewhere else in the middle of Texas, came to investigate another dairy farm. So let me just show you how portable it is. This is a very typical farm. All those cows that you see, those are all female cows. So they're all mother cows, and each of them had to be artificially impregnated in order to give birth, right? What did they do with the babies though? As you can see over there, you have all those crates. You see all the babies that had to be separated from their mothers. And let me blow your mind. That's how they advertise this shit. Now let me show you on the map where I am. So that's a farm. All these little dots, those are all cows that they have. And here, right there, these are the crates they use to separate the babies. This is another farm that I went, but like from satellite, you can already see, like for every box, there is like at least 1 or 2 calves. But I don't know in what world this would have been just normal. Like I ask myself, where did everything go so wrong that we live in a society that this is okay? If this was happening to cats and dogs, there would be riots everywhere. Now I want to tell you another story. When I was a kid, my mom got me a chicken. Today I know why the chicken was became a rooster, because they were a byproduct of egg industry. So in Iran, sometimes they sell them to kids and kill the rest of them. They dye them with like pink and green, and kids walk around, they see that. I remember asking my mom, can you buy me a chicken? And so most of them ended up dying because they're so weak. This one survived. We called him Mr. Happy. Happy was actually the first English word that I learned. And Happy was my best friend. he was loud, so our neighbors complained, so we had to give him to my grandma, and this is Happy when he grew up. And every time I went to visit my grandpa, I opened the door and Happy saw me, he was excited, he jumped at me, and we cuddled, and I was the only child, so he was really my best friend. Until one day I go there and I open the door, and Happy isn't there. And I ask my grandma, where's Happy? And she says, oh dear Faraz, I'm so sorry, the door was left open and he ran away. And I was really upset. I was like, he loved me so much, why would he run away? And for 2 or 3 weeks, I would go around the neighborhood trying to find Happy, as I was getting progressively more worried that he gets hit by a car or something. Until 10 years later, after my grandma died, my mom one day accidentally said, yeah, the chicken soup we had that night. So she killed an individual who meant so much to me. She killed my best friend and fed him to me and lied about it. But the irony of that is that day I actually knew I had chicken soup. Right? I just didn't care because I didn't think that was Mr. Happy. So I think that points out that shows you how deep this cognitive dissonance runs. And I don't think it's natural. I think that I remember I didn't like to eat meat as a kid. My mom said that you need meat to be healthy and all that. She just didn't know any better, right? And I remember, but by the time I was 22 years old, I was already addicted to that thing. And you already, however old I was, I already lost that connection with animals. I generally show 3 minutes of dominion in all of my talks. I really wanted to remove it from this, but I couldn't. Because despite the fact that most of you are probably vegan, I think it's really important for us to watch this as a reminder of why we are fighting so hard. thank you. I know it's not easy to watch. For us, it's even harder. But I hate myself if I stand in front of you and talk about the environment and pandemics and zoonotic diseases without actually talking about the actual victims here. That's why I sometimes say, show me something that is worse than this, I will quit my job, I will go do that. Show me something as neglected and as bad as this in today's world, I will go do that. My intention is not to upset you, it's just to point out that as we are speaking right now, this is still going on. When I edited this video, I didn't mean it to end with chickens, but ironically it does. And now I look at it every single time and I'm like, every single chicken there was somebody like happy. At the end of Schindler's List, if you've seen the movie, there's a part that I really like. After he rescued all these Jewish people, they're thanking him for what he did. And he just realized, he opens his watch, he had an expensive watch, and he says, this could have saved somebody. So after, at that point the war is already over, but I think the lesson for me there is we shouldn't wait. We should ask ourselves right now, what's that watch to us, right? What do we have? And it's everything. It's our money, it's our voice, it's our time, it's our career, it's everything that we have. We have to spend on this. And I didn't know if Philip was going to actually say that, but this is really my motto. I think that the good news is that we don't have to change everyone. There is no other social justice issue that we got over because everyone did the right thing. In the US, we didn't get rid of slavery because every American was against it. That's not how it worked. We literally went to war because the other side was so much against it. But guess what? We made progress. So to reach a vegan world, we don't necessarily have to make everybody vegan. When you do outreach, when you talk to people, don't expect that we can change everyone. We can't, and that's okay. We don't need to. What we need is not just more vegans, we need more active vegans. We need people who speak up and throw everything they have to fight for animals. 13 years ago, there's a Persian tradition where we buy goldfish for Persian New Year. And millions of fish die throughout the process. We don't eat them, but they're supposed to represent life and wealth and all that stuff. But people don't take care of them, they're exploited, and millions die. And when I was in college, I started to raise awareness and ask people that this is not even a Persian tradition, let's leave the fucking fish alone. And when I finally left Iran, this is my friend, she said, she's a graphic designer. So I said, hey, can you help me design a poster? I want to encourage Iranians not to do this. She refused. She said, Faraz, you're talking about all these forms of injustice. Here you are trying to rescue animals, but here you are eating them. So you just don't make any sense. You're trying to say you love animals, but you eat them. And I was like, ouch. I was butthurt for 3 months. I didn't like to hear that. But eventually I became progressively more uncomfortable with my choices and finally changed. I mention this story a lot because oftentimes in our relationships, in our friendships, in our romantic relationship, in our role in society, we're oftentimes so worried about doing the right thing and not offending people, not knowing that no one will change if they're not uncomfortable. You will go to the gym because you're uncomfortable with what you look like or you have a vision in your mind. You always take action because you're uncomfortable with how things are, and just making people uncomfortable necessarily it's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not saying that we should go necessarily make people upset. And what I love about my friend is that she had the courage. She risked our friendship, right? She could have ruined our relationship and friendship, but she didn't care about that. Her value was saying something about animals, and she valued that more than my relationship. And I think that she thought that I could do better, and that's why she held me accountable. And today I love her for that so much more than if she was trying to be fake and just play into whatever I was doing and not having that courage to say something. And when she said that, I had an aha moment. I was so mad at this guy being beaten up in the head, but I was okay with pigs being beaten up. I was against gay people for being hanged for who they are, but I was okay with chickens being hanged upside down and having their throats cut for who they are. I was all about human rights and women's rights and feminism, and yet I consume dairy, and I honestly don't know if there is any industry as abusive as dairy is to females of other species. The entire dairy industry is fundamentally based on exploiting sexual organ of cows. And so that was the connection between human rights and animal rights. And I think I asked myself, how could I miss it for such a long time? And I think that's because of speciesism and cognitive dissonance. And today I see the connection. I think that one of the biggest things when I talk to people about veganism, they're like, oh, like you guys think that a chicken is identical to a person. I said, that's not what I said. When you think about human rights, it doesn't mean that humans are identical. We are not, right? I have a different race than you. I have accent, you probably don't. I'm gay, you're unfortunately probably not. But we recognize that our differences are not morally relevant. The only thing that matters is that if you stab me, I'll get hurt. And if you oppress me, I'll suffer. And the same thing is true about animals of other species. And the two, oftentimes when I talk about veganism, the two excuses I get from people is, what about we treat animals humanely? And you're fine, I'm just gonna like reduce my consumption. But it's really important to think about veganism as a form of injustice instead of just a diet. It's not a diet. If you think about it as a form of injustice, when someone says, by the way, I always encourage people when they say they reduce, it's not like I don't, but I always tell them that the end goal is to be vegan and and they have to get there as soon as possible. Imagine if I was beating a child and someone says, stop it. And I'm like, fine, I'm just gonna beat this child once a week. We don't accept it. It's laughable, right? It's ridiculous. It only becomes a justified excuse when it comes to animals because we keep compromising. And sometimes I'm invited to talk to like LGBT groups in universities and talk to them about careers for LGBT. I don't know how that works, but I accept the invitation. Little I know it's all gonna be about veganism. I never get invited twice. So I showed them this and I say, what do you think about this? And they're like, oh, it's chicken, yummy, whatever. And then I show them this. You don't have Chick-fil-A here, right? So it's a big branch in the US, and they're notorious. So LGBT folks don't like it because they spend a lot of money on anti-gay stuff. Not a political comment, but just the moral of the story is that they don't like Chick-fil-A. The second that they realize that this is from Chick-fil-A, they suddenly see it as a form of support, like eating this as a form of supporting oppression. So it goes from being food to something that it's like they're against. So I think that when we go vegan, that's really the switch that happens. We don't look at animals as food. It becomes a matter of injustice. I want to show you an example of this. How does that make you feel?
Terrible.
Terrible?
Yeah, I've been vegan for 5 years.
You're vegan?
Yeah.
What about your friend?
My girlfriend's been vegan too, yeah.
Nice. How long?
No, not as, like, I cheat a little bit, but yeah, I try. Yeah.
You cheat?
A little bit, like cookies and stuff, save milk, but yeah. She's better vegan than me, but yeah.
So, veganism is not a diet, so you would cheat on a diet. Or when you do vegan or plant-based diet for environmental aspects, you may cheat. So veganism is an idea that you don't consume animals, and they're not for us, for our pleasure, right? So it's not a gray zone that you can be 99% vegan. It sounds like you have all the good intentions. But if you really compare that to any other form of oppression, you wouldn't accept.
Yeah.
If I did something like racist and I said like, oh, I'm just cheating on not being racist, would you accept that an excuse to me, right?
Yeah, that makes
sense. So please, so remember, every time that you don't reject animal products, you are basically saying that this is okay. You know the truth about dairy and egg, right? So if you really remember that, I understand sometimes it might seem difficult.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think it's harder for you to be vegan, or do you think it's harder for that cow to go through that, or for the chicken to go through?
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
So please treat the issue just with that seriousness. And we want to be clear that this is not food for thought, right? It's not a gray zone, it's black and white. You're either contributing to this or not. Yeah, so what I really want to encourage is that think about anything in your power to spend it on animals. It's the best cause that we can use, our life. And after searching, like, what can I do with my background and all that, what is something I could do? I think one of the most important things that we need is more people like them, right? So this is Neil Barnard from PCRM, Jane, Dr. Clapper, Chris, Philip, and Ingrid from PETA. We just need more people. They do very different things, right? Undercover investigation, medicine, animal rights. But they have one thing in common, and that's they treat veganism like a moral urgency. And so I figured that many of these people come from universities. Peter Singer, for one, became vegan or vegetarian at the time because he had a conversation with a friend. Many people got inspired in college. So I want to bring this education to every single university. And the way we work is we want to have a lot of outreach to make it impossible to not come across veganism. A lot of systematic education, and then vegan-friendly universities, so plant-based menus. I'll give you a few examples. But this is this is the Supreme Court of United States. The reason I show you is that it's probably the most powerful, some of the most powerful and influential positions in the US. And 6 out of 9 come from this student organization called Federalist Society. So this student organization, just by focusing on students, managed in 50 years, managed to have so much power because they focused in universities. And to me, it feels like we have lots of students who are very passionate, but they don't have the instruments to be effective. So I want to turn animal advocacy as something that is sporadic, and it comes and goes and dies after students graduate, to something that is like a symphony orchestra. And this is University of Texas in Austin. Every time I go there, I see Christian organizations doing, whatever Christians do. I'm not a Christian, I'm atheist, but I'm so inspired by their hard work. They're always there. And when I look at them, I'm like, why can't vegans be like this? So look at how many people are walking by. So thousands of, eyeballs, and we can have tons of conversations every single hour. This is at MIT, so we have a permanent poster here that says veganism is a moral urgency. We have these signs. Again, thousands of students in one of the best universities in the world. But it's not just having the signs. So this is University of Chicago. This is again University of Chicago for Thanksgiving, which is 2 days from now. 46 million turkeys are killed. So we put flags representing each of them with a QR code for students in front of MIT again. But the conversation that we have, we know that people are interested in different things. Some people, veganism. Some people, we just say, love animals, grab a cookie. Everyone wants a cookie. They come to get a cookie, and we say, hey, you love animals? Great, here's your cookie. Wait, do you eat animals? And they're like, oh, shit. But at that point, they're trapped in the conversation. So they leave with a leaflet. But we challenge that, right? Just tell them that college is the best place to start challenging some of these harmful societal norms. We have physicians, Dr. Kim Williams, I think is going to be here this year. Don't miss his lecture, but we have him at medical schools as well as just undergraduate campuses, because I want to educate not just future medical doctors, but also undergraduates who think that they just don't know about veganism and plant-based diet. Or screening of the movies, right? The Game Changer. Again, I'm not Christian, but every president in the US was Christian. These are a group that we want to make veganism more accessible to. I don't want veganism to be a political thing. It's a left and right thing. It's not. It's just having compassion for animals. So we just had this. Have you heard of Cowspiracy? It's a new movie. So we were on a tour. We showed it in every single university that we have a chapter from, Texas A&M to UT Austin and Harvard, MIT, all that. You said you supported the movie, right? Yeah. I didn't even know. And sanctuaries. And the last part is like working with dining halls to actually provide vegan food. That makes it a lot easier for everyone to be vegan, and it's like a positive feedback loop. I'll just show you one example. I know I have a couple of minutes, but I want to show you how when someone actually gets angry, it's not necessarily a bad thing, and how some of this conversation can change somebody's life forever.
You can't get a better dog meat? It's not a dog meat?
Fresh, local dog meat available today only.
Enough? You know what? At the end of the day, I do the fucking dog. Y'all can get a better dog meat, but I have a question for you, sir. So, what's the difference between a dog and a cow? You can't get a better dog meat? It's not a dog meat? Huh? Because you're fucked up. Y'all can't get a better dog meat.
What meat do you suggest that we
So, give a fuck what you eat. This is bullshit.
And it's wonderful that you upset the people that you're loving.
Yes or no? Yes or no? Because I yelled at this poor young lady here.
Yeah.
It's okay. What's your name?
De La Rosa.
De La Rosa. Okay, we're not actually selling dog meat. We're trying to highlight the hypocrisy between people eating pigs and cows, but not eating dogs. So all these feelings that you're feeling right now about dog meat, that's how we feel about pigs and cows. Do you eat those animals? It makes a lot of sense. Yeah. You haven't thought about it? Yeah. So since you've thought about it, you seem like a real animal lover. I really admire the passion that you approach us with. Sure. So now that you have thought about this, would you consider not harming animals when you don't have to? Really?
I love it. Okay. It's really refreshing to see someone do that.
We'll give you some resources. It's okay. Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. Just all this anger that you felt at us, I want you to feel it for every animal that's being harmed. And so, do I have your promise now that you're no longer going to pay for animals to be killed when you don't have to? You're going vegan? Amazing. The resources are all on there. I'm so proud of you. Today marks the day of your journey. And what's this little dude's name? Nico's so cute.
Yeah. I want to just tell you two quick examples before I wrap up. This is me as a graduate student, and I was doing activism on my campus, and this guy, his name is Joey. He was a part of Future Farmers of America. If you don't know what that is, they raise animals as a competition in high school and sell them for slaughter. And he was in like military. After a 5-minute conversation, he came back next day and he was vegan. And we became friends and roommates, and he really wanted to do something for the environment. He wanted to remove plastics from oceans. And I said, Joey, what is the #1 cause of plastic pollution in oceans? He didn't know. I was like, it's actually fishing. So again, the problem is the food that we are eating. So he got his doctorate. He is now dedicating his entire life to making bioreactors for cultivated meat as well as alternatives to animal testing. He discovered a new drug, and he's trying to actually make the drug available for the first time without testing on animals. He's one of the smartest people I've ever met. But then I asked myself, what if that day I wasn't there? It just happened that I was at the right time at the right place. How many other opportunities, how many other Joes, how many other future Philip Wollens are walking around, but we missed the opportunity to find them and inspire them? This is another one. This is Natalie. She volunteers for us. This girl sat down at our table that says, why aren't you vegan yet? With a bag of Chick-fil-A. I was like, oh, where's this one going? After this, she actually decided to go vegan. And then she comes to me and she says, I'm convinced I'm gonna go vegan, but I already paid for this. What should I do with this chicken I already bought? And I said, if you're asking me that just means that you're still not thinking about this as a vegan. When you become vegan, that chicken ceases to be food. You don't look at it as food. And she was like, oh, that's right. So she walked to a trash can and dumped that chicken in front of me, saved the French fries. And I never heard from her again until next year when I went on a tour. I realized that she's still vegan. She managed to get her family to go vegan, and she's now one of the officers doing activism. And if you want a real example of this today, where is Jot? Oh, there you go. I was just talking to him. He became vegan. He made his family go vegan. Now he's doing activism. So people like us exist. We're not the only ones. But the last thing I want to say is that think about these leaders that you really admire, like MLK and Gandhi, and ask yourself, what is that thing that we really admire about them? Is this because they saw injustice and they shut up and they went with it? They were trying to be popular? Or do we like them because they just never shut up in the face of injustice? They saw something that was wrong and they did their best to end it. But I also encourage you to understand that they were not necessarily popular at their time. They got shot at, they went to jail. And let's be honest, like, what is success? Was MLK successful? I don't know, racism still exists, right? But we progressed a lot just because people like him didn't give up. And I also want to encourage you to understand that these are not superhumans. They're just people, like ordinary people like us. They just cared and they threw everything they had at it. So I want to end with something very powerful that Philip said, that if you'd seen what I've seen, you'd be just like me. I'm a prisoner of what I know. I'm a victim of what I've seen. I can't change. I won't change. I will never change. I'm only going to become worse. So let's get worse. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Faraz, for a most powerful, compelling presentation. It was worth bringing him out to Australia. I've never had a young man with this much potential. Can I make just 3 very brief points, if you don't mind, after my little talk earlier today? Last night, Peter and Faraz had dinner in my home, and they asked me, what made you switch? And I gave up this life of lobsters and Learjets in exchange for shelters and slaughterhouses. And at the time, my favorite food was filet mignon and lobster, a fact for which I'm so profoundly ashamed today. And it happened to me because I was appointed, I was in my 30s, a young man. I went out to advise a large corporate on a restructuring, and one of the businesses they owned turned out to be a slaughterhouse. Now, what I saw that day frightened the hell out of me. Now, I became vegetarian on the spot. But I didn't know anything about dairy. I thought it was beautiful cows and calves and streams and mountains and pastures. I was wrong. And then I was in India doing an advisory assignment for a large group of banks. I was walking down the street and I saw a dairyman dragging his cow down the street, and the cow on a rope, and the cow being hit by a lorry and had broken his spine. And he was dragging her to the slaughterhouse, and alongside her was a starving, skinny, scrawny calf. And to get the cow to move, he was throwing chili powder in her eyes and shoving sharp objects up her anus. When he got to the slaughterhouse gates, before he handed over the cow to the butcher, the bastard milked her. So even at the last moment of his life, she was still being abused by human beings. Now, if that doesn't change the heart of a man, nothing will. And it changed mine. I came back to Australia. I didn't even know what a vegan was. I just knew. No one told me I was, but my shoes, my belt, my watch band suddenly didn't have leather products in it. I never became vegan. I just woke up one day and discovered that's what I was. And I became an expert in the dairy industry, and I would wear my merchant banker suit, pull off in a Mercedes, looking like $1 million, and the farmers would let me in because I was cool. And they opened up their books and they let me see what I want. And I saw male calves who were so-called unviable because they can't be sold for veal. The way that you have to kill them in the West is by smashing their heads in with a hammer or jumping on their rib cage and crushing their hearts. That is the law. And that is what convinced me that my life was over, and I stopped being a merchant banker. It was over for me 40 years ago. And that is why it is so important that we have people like Faraz in this movement. Now, I want to say to Faraz, I was going to say it in the email, but I'm not. I might as well tell you now. I'm going to give you $100,000 to help you in your projects.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm speechless. Thank you.
We have some time for questions. Does anyone have any questions?
Heavy, huh?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
With the outreach that you're doing in the universities, is there like a training workshop or any sort of documents, anything that we can learn from?
Yeah, and we are trying to put together more material because students also ask us. Yeah, but I have some stuff I can send you. Yeah.
It would be very interesting.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think something that I see a lot is, especially the younger generation in universities, people are so afraid of speaking up. And anything you do, you get pushback, right? So sometimes they say, oh, the dog meat is bad, you know, the posters is bad, showing the footage is bad. I was like, what should I do? It's because when you finally remove this curtain and show this ugliness, it makes people uncomfortable, and it's a lot easier to just say, I don't want to see, I don't want to hear about it, right? So we just try to deflect. So I really want to just bring this sense of urgency. Like I said, we don't need just more vegans, we need more active vegans. And when I say active, it doesn't mean hold the TV necessarily, do this conversation, it just means just do something. Just understand that in the face of injustice, silence is not an option. That's all I need the students to understand.
Yeah. So when it comes to looking at like the science creating alternative proteins, given that veganism, like for us, is already very accessible, why do you see that as something that is really important to invest in?
So alternative proteins are 3 categories. One of them is lab-grown meat and cultivated meat, which I assume you're talking about. The other one is also plant-based foods, and the other one is called precision fermentation. But even if this alternative protein includes plant-based foods, the R&D, research development for plant-based foods, have been going on for not more than 10, 15 years. Versus for sausage and hot dogs and everything, the day we started eating animal products, R&D was going on to make those products, quote unquote, tastier with adding stuff to it, right? So the question is, how can we make even plant-based foods healthier and tastier? So that's still something that we need to work on. I don't think any of that matters. Like if you ask me, we already have, like I agree, 100% agree with you. But we have to accept that there are people who are not gonna change. And for them, if what it takes for them to go vegan is just more, like, I guess, tastier vegan foods, whether it's cultivated meat or plant-based. But I do agree with you. Like I get depressed when I think about it. Like, don't we already have everything we need to be vegan? And we absolutely do. I agree, but unfortunately, it's not an ideal world. And if that's one thing that, and it's not the only thing that we should do, right? It's one thing that I do, but I think that to me, the most important thing is changing people's perspective, and that's why I focus on universities. That's only one of the tools we can use to get to that world, but the underlying thing is just changing how we view animals, which really what veganism is, right? It's like not viewing them as slaves and commodities and resources and things that we get to exploit for our pleasure, and looking at them as like individual sentient beings.
Maybe time for one more question. Do we have any more questions?
You also asked about the conversation around health, and I guess like how you have a conversation that there's so much misinformation, or discussing like someone something they need to eat fish for like strong period pain. And it's like, can't talk to you about that. But it's like, is it important to go through nutrition, or, you know, like how do you defeat that?
I think it's very important. So when I think about like smoking, that used to be completely normal 50, 60 years ago, people were proud of it. Like, for people who smoke, smoking probably still gives as much pleasure as it did 50 years ago, but very fewer people smoke today, and that's mostly because of the health things. Yes, there is a lot of misinformation, and the other side, meat industry, egg and dairy industry, they're powerful, they have a lot of money, they have a lot of influence, and they spend a lot of money for this to spread this misinformation, right? That's why I think that, like Philip was saying, like we have already so many people, we just have to organize and make sure that we also fight back. I think that our best weapon is just truth, whether it's nutrition or just showing people the footage. But when it comes to medicine, I think that's why a big wing of what I do is to bring all these plant-based doctors to medical schools and like to talk to students to diffuse some of that misinformation. And it works. Like I said, not everyone goes vegan, but I've seen people at Kim Williams's and Dr. Clapper's event who just decide to go vegan like immediately. So we know it works. Yeah, there's misinformation. It's a battle, and it's not going to end anytime soon. So what can you do except just giving it your best and make sure that you provide people with. But what's completely missing right now, I can tell you one thing, that showing people the truth is completely missing right now. You can go through 4 years of college, never even hear the other side. You can go through 4 years of medical school, never even learn about benefits of plant-based diet at all. All you hear is probably like plants don't have enough proteins. That's what you learn in medical school, right? So before I expect people to do better, I have to give them the opportunity to learn better, right? So that's the goal. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I think we're going to finish up there.
Do we have the award thing?
Sorry?
Do the award part?
We have to kind of be out of the room by 5 o'clock, but we have a very important presentation to make before that happens. After the presentation, please do help yourself with foods and the tea and the coffee. I'm going to hand it back over to you for.
Sounds good. Thank you. So as Philip said, this is from last night. He was showing me this album of tons of projects, like it's this thick, and it's selected projects that he has supported over time. And I think something Dr. Clapper said that I really fully agree is that I don't know how this man hasn't won a Nobel Prize yet. But I think that I love how all these projects had kindness in them, as if this man has trademarked kindness. There is not much left for us to give away anymore. I'm joking. It's a horrible world, and we can't have enough of people like him. But I think that sometimes we wait too long to appreciate people who dedicate their entire life and time to making this world a better place. And that includes all of you as well. And that's why, I think that my nonprofit is still not as big as I want it to be yet. But I do have a big mouth and a big heart. And with my big mouth and heart, I wanted to ask you to join me, and I try to hide this Liberation Award that I carried from Texas to California, from California to Arizona, from Arizona back to California, and to Australia. And it managed not to break. And yes, I would like to read something that I wrote here. In recognition of your unwavering lifetime commitment for protection of animals and your relentless dedication to addressing this moral urgency with the highest level of seriousness and hard work, while many of the lives you have saved will never learn about you or have the opportunity to thank you, we thank you on behalf of all the human and non-human animals you have sheltered under your wings. No evil lasts forever, but the impact of your work, your kindness, and your dedication to the cause of animal protection will be eternal and immortal, leaving a lasting imprint for generations to come. And we vow to carry your mission forward, ensuring that your legacy lives on, until every cage is empty and every animal is liberated. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm profoundly grateful and honored to receive this and to be in your presence, sir. For as you represent the best in us, fighting the worst in us. And I think one day when all the cages are broken down and animal cruelty is confined to the dustbin of ignominy and history, and that culture is enshrined in our culture and our law and our character, one day when that happens, your fingerprints will be on every page. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I forgot. I show you this and I'll let you go. But I told some of my students that I'm doing this, and some of them send us some videos, so I just wanted to show you. Just some of the people who were touched by Philip's life.
The ASAP chapter of the Ohio State University.
Thank you, Mr. Wollen, for your lifetime of fighting for animals, humans, and our planet. 7 years ago, I was inspired by other vegans to give up eating animals, but it was you who moved me to action. As a Vietnamese student back then, I could barely talk in English, but your powerful words and compassion made me want to dedicate my life to help save innocent lives. Thank you for showing us that that kind of world is possible.
And he's an activist. He is Vietnamese. I'm so proud of him. His English wasn't even that great, and so he had a hard time doing outreach, but he's so good now, single-handedly, in Houston, Texas, stands out there and talks to people about veganism.
Hi, Mr. Wollen. My name is Ryan Blum. I'm a student at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I help run the Allied Scholars for Animal Protection, or ASAP chapter there, with Dr. Faraz Harsini. And I want to make a brief video to thank you. I saw Dr. Faraz Harsini's social media clips, which had some of you on, as well as his YouTube channel. And it was great having you on there to see you guys talk. But I actually first came across your work and your wise words years ago when I first went vegan in high school. And I watched many of your speeches on YouTube. They really inspired me to get active, but one of them in particular, called Animal Rights Art Exhibition on YouTube, has around 20,000 views. It would surprise me for around 1%, 2 of those views are mine and mine alone at this point, as that speech really moves me like no other. At the end of the speech, you close with, if not you, who? If not now, when? And I try to embody that in my own work every day, inspiring other students, getting out in the street, out of campus. Some nights, some days are not very productive. I feel like I just wasted some time. Other days, I have the most meaningful conversations ever. And I can only feel so grateful that I chose that day to have that conversation where somebody went vegan, where somebody understood the moral urgency of this issue. And it's speeches like yours, it's people like you who inspire me just a little bit more each and every day to do that. I have a specific memory of walking on a cold Wisconsin night, February, my freshman year, listening to you in my earbuds as you give that speech of yours. The wind and the snow is pelting me in the face as I make my way back to my dorm. And I can only help but feel inspired and want to inspire others to work hard, to end this injustice. And this world needs leaders. This world needs people to inspire. And I think you really embody that, at least for me. And I hope to continue with that message.
Yeah, that's it. Ryan at University of Wisconsin, he has consistently has events, talks to tons of students every single day. And I personally observed how he made a bunch of people go vegan and now they're activists. So that like ripple effect, that snowball effect, I think it's so powerful. And yesterday you were mentioning like someone did some calculations that he has saved 10 billion lives. And I don't know even when that calculation was done, but by now it's probably even a lot more. And you know, it's not just human lives, but imagine every person he helped go vegan and not eat animals, just number of animals an average person eats, you know, do the calculation and it adds up. But that's really the power we have. Every single conversation, you never know the impact, the ripple effect. So thank you again. Thanks for coming. Really appreciate your hospitality. Peter, Philip, everyone, thank you. Thank you so much for having me and all the pain and headaches. So thank you guys. Peace.